The day I asked for a divorce. Alice couldn't wait to draft the papers. 5 years ago, she was forced to marry me. Now she was finally free. The day we finalized the divorce, Alice brought her first love. She looked happy, but there was a sneer in her voice when she said, "Bruce, look at you. So pathetic." I watched her back as she walked away, her figure blurring in my vision. Pathetic? Maybe, but not in the next life. The moment I asked for a divorce, Alice just stood there, staring at me for so long it felt like she was trying to burn a hole through me. It wasn't until I pulled out the divorce papers and signed my name that she snapped out of it, her fingers tracing the document as she read it over and over. I knew she couldn't believe it. After 5 years of being tangled up with her, I was the one asking for a divorce. After a long pause, she tossed the papers down, a barely noticeable smirk on her lips. "I don't understand this. I need my legal team to look it over." I gripped the pen a little tighter and explained, "You don't need to. I'm leaving with nothing. I don't want anything." Her voice was sharp. "How do I know you're not trying to trick me?" I looked up at her, suddenly remembering that night 5 years ago. All these years she'd held a grudge. But after all this time, she knew better than anyone what kind of person I was. I just dropped the pen and sat there. "Fine. I'll wait for you to draft your own agreement. I'll come back then." With that, I got up to leave. She blocked my way, stopping me. "Wait here. It won't take long." She seemed desperate to draw a line between us, practically flying out the door and disappearing. I sank onto the sofa. In the eerily quiet office, the doctor's words came back to me. "Late-stage leukemia. You might not even have a chance for a bone marrow transplant." I sighed, staring at the empty doorway where she'd vanished. Maybe she wouldn't care at all. Blood started trickling from my nose. I wiped it with my hand, but it didn't stop, so I quickly grabbed some tissues, taking half the box from Alice's desk. Good thing no one saw. Soon, Alice came back in with a new divorce agreement. She saw me leaning my head back, my hand still trying to stop the bleeding, and looked surprised. "What are you doing?" I quickly threw the tissues in the trash and sat down, trying to look natural. When I took the agreement, I saw the clause she'd added at the end. I had to leave behind everything that wasn't mine, including jewelry, even clothes and shoes. I knew who those things were for. I'd never wanted them anyway. I quickly signed it and handed it to Alice. After checking it thoroughly, she finally spoke. "Bruce, I expect you to keep your word. I don't want to see you again." I knew how much she despised me. In these 5 years, she'd never given me a second glance. I looked at the familiar figure waiting by the door and nodded. We probably wouldn't see each other again. In the 5 years Alice and I were married, I rarely bought anything new. I never touched the clothes she bought. After signing the divorce papers, I just packed a few changes of clothes and left. Now I was like a homeless person. After thinking for a long time, I finally called Bob. Actually, I did have a home. 5 years ago, I had loving parents and a kind Bob. I hadn't contacted Bob in ages. The phone rang for a long time before he picked up. A slightly impatient voice filled my ear. "What is it?" I froze, a sudden wave of sadness washing over me. "Bob, I want to come home." He seemed to think for a long time before finally saying, "Come back, and we'll talk." To get home, I had to go through a narrow, dark alley with no light. Dazedly, I thought I saw Bob's familiar figure walking through it. He knew I was afraid of the dark. He was coming to get me. I reached out, but the figure vanished. I was still standing alone in the dim alley. I couldn't remember the last time Bob had come through this alley to meet me. Swallowing my fear, I finally made it home. Bob was sitting in the living room, his face grim. Before I could even sit down, he threw a stack of papers at me. I picked them up and saw they were project contracts, all canceled. "Look what you've done." I didn't argue. It seemed Alice had told Bob about the divorce immediately and was now retaliating against our family this way. "Bruce, when you schemed your way into Alice's bed, did you ever think it would come to this? Now that Alice is sick of you and dumped you, you want to come home? Does our family owe you something? You're going to destroy this family. We'll lose everything because of you." Bob's eyes were bloodshot, his emotions out of control. It was the first time in 5 years he'd said so much to me, letting out all his pent-up anger. I knew he'd always blamed me, but these past 5 years hadn't been easy for anyone. I held back my tears as the papers hit me. A familiar wave of dizziness washed over me, paradoxically clearing my head for a moment. I quickly pressed my nose, holding it for a long time. No blood. Good. Once Bob calmed down, I finally spoke. What we owe, I'll do my best to pay it back. With my illness, I didn't know how much time I had left. But before I died, I would do everything I could to repay what I owed them. Bob looked me up and down as if I'd told a joke. With what? Then, he suddenly remembered something. Alice is having dinner with those business partners tonight. Come with me. We'll ask her to help us. We're divorced. Then tell me, how are you going to help? Bruce, Alice is the only one who can help us now. Before I could say anything, Bob had grabbed the contracts and was dragging me out the door. I hadn't expected to see Alice again so soon. She was in a great mood tonight, drinking every glass offered to her by the business partners without refusing any. Only Bob and I sat in the corner, like forgotten clowns. She didn't even touch the glass Bob raised to her. The others at the table exchanged knowing glances and started to mock us. Looks like you two don't know your place. Alice gave you so many projects and now you're eyeing ours? Such a big appetite. Be careful you don't bite off more than you can chew. Bob's face fell, but he quickly put on a smile. All those projects were cancelled. We're just hoping Alice can throw us a bone. Alice looked annoyed and pointed at me. Want new projects? He has to be the one to toast me. Bob looked flustered, glanced at me, and quickly explained, he can't drink. I'll drink with Alice. Alice didn't budge, just stared at me. She always loved to seize any opportunity to make things difficult for me. Bob stepped in front of me, trying to smooth things over. You were married, after all. Don't make it hard for him. I'll drink. It was strong liquor, probably over 100 proof. Bob downed glass after glass until his face was flushed red and he couldn't take any more. He suddenly retched and threw up. Alice recoiled in disgust, quickly stepping aside and wiping her hands with a handkerchief. I went to help Bob, but he pushed me towards Alice. Quick, apologize to Alice. Ask her to help our family. I picked up a glass of the liquor from the table and chugged it down. I knew this was what Alice wanted to see. My stomach churned. The words begging her were on the tip of my tongue. But what came out was, we'll find a way to pay back the money we owe. If Alice doesn't want to give us these projects, that's fine. Hearing this, Bob sobered up instantly and, in a fit of rage, slapped me. Do you even know what you're saying? Without her help, our family is finished. How are you going to pay back all those debts? Bruce, do you even know how Mom and Dad died? My head buzzed as if a needle had pierced it. I could barely stand and started to fall sideways. Alice seemed to have no patience for our drama. Seeing me collapse to the floor, her voice dripped with sarcasm. Don't put on a show for me. It's disgusting. Then, she walked around me. I looked up and saw her arm in arm with someone at the door, leaving without a backward glance. I desperately fought back the nausea, digging my fingernails into my palms. A warm trickle of liquid ran from my nose. Bob stared at me, shocked. Bruce, what's wrong? I wasn't about to use my illness to get his pity. I tried to sound casual. Drank too fast. Just a bit of a nosebleed from the alcohol. The panic in his eyes vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual cold expression. Our family is ruined because of you. Mom and Dad died because of you. Bruce, you're a jinx. How can you still be living so comfortably? I knew Bob was just saying those things out of anger. He used to be really good to me, but it was also true that he hated me now. That thing 5 years ago felt like I was the only one at fault. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. I wiped my face haphazardly and walked out alone. The wind cut to the bone. The streets were nearly empty. Dried blood caked my face. I rubbed it hard with my sleeve, remembering Alice's parting words. It's disgusting. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt weak all over and collapsed. I knew she was also talking about what happened 5 years ago. What happened 5 years ago, it was all my fault in the end. They had every right to hate me. Back then, I had just graduated from college and landed an internship at a top law firm. My future looked bright, but I was so busy I rarely went home. My parents were worried about me and planned to sell our house to move to the city where I worked. Housing in the city was incredibly expensive. To join me sooner, they took on a construction project and acted as guarantors. But they were careless. The person in charge ran off with the money, and suddenly, they were saddled with enormous debt. From then on, Bob and I started getting frequent calls from debt collectors. Later, my parents were cornered, driven to the rooftop by debt collectors. The day they jumped, I was out of town with my boss, handling a legal dispute for Alice's company before its IPO. At the dinner table, Alice was modest and polite, handling herself with grace. When she complimented me, there was always a gentle smile on her face. I glanced at her and met her dark eyes. My heart inexplicably sped up. Later, after a drink, when I woke up, things had spiraled out of control. My parents jumped from the rooftop. Debt collectors came to our door. Bob called, his voice desperate. "Bruce, come home quick. Something happened to Mom and Dad." That day, Alice and I were ambushed by a horde of reporters outside our hotel room. News broke that Alice had a messy private life. To ensure her company's IPO went smoothly, she had to lie and say we were a long-term couple. I had planned to sort out my family's affairs and then help Alice clear things up. But when I saw my parents lying in that cold morgue, I suddenly felt a surge of resentment. Burdened with huge debts, I barely had the energy to find the person who had destroyed my parents. So I changed my story and said I wanted to marry Alice, to use her to achieve my goals. I still remember her shocked, incredulous expression at the press conference. She looked like she was being torn apart. I went with her to her house and asked to borrow money. She was furious, throwing the card at my head. "Stop following me. You disgust me." It was a stark contrast to the polite, humble Alice I'd seen before. That night, I saw Jimmy come to her. He leaned into her embrace, sobbing quietly. I didn't have much headspace for anything else. I transferred the money to Bob so he could start paying off the debts. Bob called me shameless. In the end, it was all my fault. I lay by the roadside, chilled to the bone. Someone nudged me, then carefully helped me up. "Bruce, Bruce." Was that Alice's voice? Or Bob's? Couldn't quite tell. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a strange face. So it was neither of them. It was all in my head. I touched my face and forehead again. I was burning up like boiling water. The kind man who woke me jumped back when he saw my blood-smeared face. I used all my strength to push myself up. My head felt as heavy as a lead ball. The man asked if he should call an ambulance for me. I shook my head, declining his kindness. I dragged my broken body to the hospital alone. By now it was broad daylight. My frozen, stiff body slowly started to warm up. I registered with a different doctor and waited quietly. Stella saw me sitting alone on a bench in the hallway, looking puzzled. "What are you doing here? Are you not feeling well?" I looked up at her, feeling a bit guilty. "I have a fever. Came to get some medicine. Come with me. Let me take a look." When I didn't move, she stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" I registered with another doctor. "It's nothing serious. Just need some cold medicine." "Bruce." Seeing she was getting angry, I finally got up and followed her in. Truthfully, I just didn't want to bother her. Every time I came to Stella, she either waived the consultation fee or paid for my medication. I owed her too much, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to pay it all back before I died. After Stella asked about my condition, her brow furrowed instantly. Her tone was serious. "It's getting worse. You should be admitted to the hospital as soon as possible." I re-registered under her name on my phone and tried to sound casual. "No need. Can't be cured anyway. I might as well earn some more money. Stella, can you prescribe something to stop the bleeding? It seems to be happening more often lately." Stella knew my situation. She fell silent instantly. I saw the corners of her eyes turn red, and she secretly turned her head away for a while before speaking. "You still need to be hospitalized. Don't worry about the money. Next time." I cut her off, not letting her continue. Her mouth, which had opened, closed again. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Finally, I broke the heavy silence. "Stella, you mentioned referring a case to me last time. Can I still take it?" She refused quickly. "Your current condition isn't suitable for work." I had no choice but to plead with her for a long time before she reluctantly agreed to send me her friend's contact information. Seeing the worry in her eyes, I assured her, "Don't worry. I'll do my best to win this case for your friend." After a thought, knowing what she was worried about, I promised again, once I earn the money, I'll come straight to the hospital. The past couple of weeks went smoothly. Stella's friend's case was easy to handle, with plenty of evidence. It would be closed in another week. I looked at the final payment deposited into my bank account. I knew they trusted me this much because of Stella. So I called Stella and invited her to dinner to thank her properly. At the restaurant, we happened to run into her colleagues, so we all sat together. Just as everyone was seated, someone else walked in. I looked up, it was Alice. She saw me, her expression unchanged, pulled out a chair and sat down. She was good friends with the head of Stella's department and got along well with them too, but her gaze towards Stella was distinctly unfriendly. During the meal, Stella tried to drink for me, while Alice kept urging me to drink. I remember Bruce being a good drinker, not giving face today. Stella's face darkened as she refused for me. He can't drink. Alice, looking like she wouldn't give up, came over to pour me a drink. Bruce knows whether he can drink or not. Her tone was full of threat. I knew if I didn't drink today, she'd target Stella next. She was always ruthless like that. I didn't want to involve Stella, so I picked up the full glass and downed it in one go. The strong alcohol burned my throat and chest. I drank a glass. Alice matched me. After many consecutive glasses, I was very drunk. Seeing things were getting out of hand, others intervened. Bruce is a good drinker. Let's drink again next time. That's enough for today. Alice seemed unwilling to let me off and continued pouring. Her friend stopped her, joking, "If you keep drinking, your husband will come looking for me to settle scores." Alice froze, staring at me. Panicked. Besides Stella, they didn't know that the man Alice had married 5 years ago was me. We're divorced. He has no right to control me. For a moment, I had the illusion that her tones sounded like she was jealous and sulking. But when I looked up, her eyes were filled with clear hatred. I realized then, she had always hated me. Ever since I tore her apart from her beloved 5 years ago. Stella helped me out the door. She wanted to take me home, but I didn't have a fixed place to live now. I didn't even know where I was going, so I refused. The alcohol was hitting me hard. I fought back nausea and planned to book the nearest hotel to get through the night. In a daze, I thought I saw Alice following me, but I was so dizzy, and in the dark night, my vision was blurry. I couldn't see things clearly. I got a room. Just as the door was about to close, someone burst in, grabbed my arm, and threw me onto the bed. My stomach churned, and I rushed to the bathroom to throw up. In the mirror, I saw Alice standing right behind me. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up at her. Her tone was full of malice. "Looks like your luck with women has improved since divorcing me, Bruce." I wanted to explain, but it felt pointless. Seeing my silence, Alice, overcome by some unknown anger, forcefully shoved me aside. She gritted her teeth. "Bruce, don't forget we're not divorced yet." I couldn't hear what she was saying clearly anymore. I just suddenly remembered that night she was hugging someone else. I was afraid the reporters would see, so I quickly pulled her hand to my waist and leaned against her. She had pushed me away with the same force back then, utterly disgusted. "Bruce, don't forget we're not married yet." I felt weak all over and collapsed, a metallic taste rising in my throat. Before I lost consciousness, I heard her urgent voice. "Bruce, what's wrong?" I woke up in the hospital alone. Just as I was wondering who had brought me to the hospital, Alice walked in with a report. Our eyes met. She spoke. "You drank that little and vomited so much blood? Anyone would think you had some terminal illness and were trying to scam me." My heart leaped into my throat. I thought she knew. She tossed the test results at me. Strong alcohol damaging the stomach. Just diagnosed as gastric bleeding. Then came the sarcasm again. 5 years ago, you used the same kind of trick to scheme against me. She had always believed that 5 years ago, I got her drunk and then systematically manipulated her into marrying me. But that incident had been investigated. We had just happened to drink a bit more because we were happy. The problem was with the last 2 drinks the waiter brought. It was her business rivals who had sent them over intentionally. I just happened to be there. Later, she was forced to marry me, and I tore her away from her beloved. That's why she still hates me. Knowing I was in the wrong, I apologized. "I'm sorry. 5 years ago, it wasn't intentional. Bob and I will pay back the money we owe you as soon as possible." She stared at me, then suddenly laughed. "Isn't it a bit late to say sorry now?" I didn't understand what she meant. She took out her phone and played a video. It was Bob, causing a scene at her company, trashing her office and injuring someone. I anxiously tried to grab her phone, but she sidestepped, and I lunged at nothing. She said mockingly, "Without me, your family can't survive. Can it? Bruce, after all your scheming, you ended up with nothing. I'd like to see how you two brothers are going to pay back what you owe me." There was a smile in her eyes. For the past 5 years, she had been thinking about how to get revenge on me. Now that we were divorced, she no longer had to hold back and could go all out. Before leaving, her triumphant tone didn't lessen. As the door closed, her voice came through. "You'd better think hard about how you're going to fight this lawsuit against my legal team." Alice called the police. She refused any mediation, so Bob was temporarily detained. I dealt with her legal team alone, completely overwhelmed and stressed out. Later, I realized I was helpless. Alice was intentionally retaliating against me, and she had countless ways to do it. Instead of running around like a headless chicken, it was better to ask her what she wanted. When I entered her company, she and her legal team were waiting for me. It was rare for her to spend so much time tangling with me. When I received the lawsuit, I didn't even look at it and asked her directly, "Alice, what do you want? Just say it." I heard her scoff. Then she slowly said, "Bankruptcy, of course. I won't let anyone who schemed against me get away." I looked up at her again. I remembered that most of the money I borrowed from Alice back then had been repaid, with about 100,000 or so left. I then calculated the approximate amount needed for compensation due to Bob's recent trouble. The money in my account plus the fees from the recent case was just about enough to cover it. However, I probably wouldn't have a single cent left for my subsequent medical treatment. Without hesitation, I took out my phone and transferred all the money to her. Alice received the transfer, looked surprised, but quickly composed herself. I said, "I don't accept mediation." I replied, "If Alice insists on suing, then sue. If Alice treats her own husband like this, I'll let the world see what kind of person you really are." Alice was stunned for a moment, speechless. Then she seemed to think of something and looked at me with a complicated expression. After a long pause, she took out her phone again and called her secretary. Her face instantly brightened. "Why don't you take a look at this first? Today's trending news. A shabbily dressed man kneeling in front of a house, wearing a sign that read, 'Bruce has no professional ethics, is unscrupulous, bullies the weak. I demand justice.'" I frowned, watching. The man in the news was the defendant from a few days ago. The case was already closed, the judgment fair. Why was he putting on this show now? Things escalated too quickly. Before I could even figure out why, a flood of negative comments swept over everything. Someone even dug up our family's affairs from 5 years ago. Bob was released. Alice dropped the lawsuit and agreed to mediation. Now, just like 5 years ago, we were caught in a whirlwind of public opinion. Those people were even crazier than 5 years ago. Seeing me being attacked and retaliated against, Alice lost interest in haggling with me further. The day I went to pick Bob up, I saw a swarm of reporters rush out from behind Alice, all asking about the embezzlement of project funds 5 years ago and being forced to jump off a building. Seeing this, Bob, without a word, slapped me in public. Then he left in a huff, leaving me alone, engulfed by the crowd. When I didn't respond for a long time, the reporters gradually dispersed. I leaned weakly against the wall and saw Alice walking towards me. Her hands were in her pockets, and she looked at me with schadenfreude. "Bruce, you're not all that, are you?" I knew she still remembered what I had said to her a few days ago. She had finally seized the opportunity to show everyone what kind of person Bruce, was. I looked up, my voice calm. "Alice, are you satisfied with the outcome now? You finally got your revenge. You must be very happy, right?" I saw Alice's expression change several times. She didn't say anything for a long time. I forced myself to stand up, watching as her recent triumphant demeanor vanished completely. Suddenly, I felt extremely tired. I didn't want to have anything more to do with the woman in front of me. I spoke softly, "Alice, the 1-month cooling-off period is over. Let's go get the divorce certificate." A flash of shock crossed her eyes, but she quickly concealed it. Watching my retreating back, her voice, laced with anger and a slight tremor, called out, "Bruce, everyone can see what kind of person you are now." I didn't respond. Sitting in the car, I thought about what happened 5 years ago. Forcing her to marry me, I truly wronged her. But I had explained back then. After her company successfully went public, I also proposed divorce multiple times. But each time, she responded with harsh words. Bruce, you want to leave after using me? What you owe me, you can never repay. Because of those words, I started working day and night to earn money to pay her back. In public, I played the role of Alice's husband, accompanying her to various receptions, helping her sign one deal after another. In private, I fulfilled my duties as a husband, keeping her parents happy, taking care of her emotional needs. In the days after my parents passed away, I was repeatedly consumed by self-blame, plagued by nightmares. After waking up startled in the middle of the night, I'd get her call and then rush to put on one smile after another in front of the cameras, clarifying her relationship with Jimmy. Even when she brought Jimmy home, I could pretend not to see what kind of person I was. She had seen clearly over these years. Even if Alice were a stone, I should have warmed her by now. I thought what I did was a form of atonement, that maybe it would make Alice hate me less. But she wanted revenge, resorting to any means at any cost to push me into a corner. Actually, I knew our family had been relying solely on Bob to keep it afloat these past few years. Actually, I knew Alice had secretly snatched many of our deals. If it weren't for me, Bob wouldn't have had to struggle so hard. Alice hated me and Bob disliked me too. I let out a soft sigh. Now heavily in debt, on the verge of bankruptcy. And I still didn't know how many days I had left to live. Before I died, the most important thing was to find the person who had harmed my parents. To clear my parents' names. I tried to contact some old friends whom I had previously asked to look into my parents' case. But I didn't know that when I rushed over, Alice was there again. Seeing the stack of documents in her hand, I quickly snatched them away, looking at her warily. Alice looked guilty, her voice very soft. I was just passing by. They're your friends and my friends. Is there anything wrong with me looking at the documents? I didn't say anything. After taking the documents, I thanked them and left, not wanting to become a laughingstock. On the way back, Stella called me, telling me to go to the hospital for admission. This time, I really had no excuse. After submitting the documents to the court, I took a taxi to the hospital. I thought a couple more days in the hospital might mean a couple more days to live. New evidence for my parents' case had been found. The culprit would soon be identified. I needed to take care of myself to clear my parents' names. Stella seemed very busy. She said she would come down to pick me up and handle the admission procedures. I waited for a long time but didn't see her, and she didn't answer her phone. I had to go up to her office to find her. The hallway was noisy. From a distance, I saw Stella in her white coat, surrounded by people. Nearby, I heard a nurse calling for help, saying a patient was causing trouble. I was a bit worried about her and pushed my way to the front. The person was very agitated, pulled a knife out of their bag, and was about to stab Stella in the neck. Everyone scattered in terror. My mind went blank, and I rushed forward, throwing myself onto her. Blood. So much blood. My vision turned crimson. I didn't know if it was from my nose or my back, but it wouldn't stop. Before I lost consciousness, I heard Stella frantically calling my name, and another figure rushing over from a distance. I vaguely saw. It looked like Alice. I was rushed into the operating room and underwent a long emergency procedure. The injury itself wasn't severe, but with my ravaged body, the bleeding just wouldn't stop. Fortunately, I pulled through. After a day in the ICU, I was transferred to a regular ward. When my bed was wheeled out, I saw Alice standing nearby, her eyes bloodshot. I didn't know what to make of it. She was probably there to see if I was dead yet. I hadn't granted her wish. I was still alive. Stella rushed over as soon as she finished her surgery. Seeing I was okay, she let out a long sigh of relief. In the hospital room, her eyes were already red. I never knew Stella cried so easily. Ever since I'd known her, especially when she saw me like this, she always ended up wiping away tears. I joked, "Stella, am I that ugly?" She looked at me blankly. I smiled. "Did my ugliness make you cry?" Stella suddenly hugged me, her grip surprisingly strong. "That was too dangerous. You should have stayed away in a situation like that." Honestly, I didn't think much. I just couldn't stand by and watch someone as good as Stella get hurt. Anyway, I'm a dying man. My life isn't worth much. Thank you for saving me. She stood up, her expression complex, like a doctor's profound pity for a terminally ill patient. After a long pause, she finally said, "Bruce, live well." I instantly understood what she meant. I replied, "I will." She couldn't stay any longer and left in a hurry. I had just closed my eyes to rest when Alice pushed the door open, her face ashen. She seemed to be losing control, her voice louder. "Is this how she treats you?" I didn't understand what she meant. "What?" Her voice was furious. "For her, you'd even give up your life? And she won't even bother to take care of you a little?" I sort of understood what she was getting at. I replied with a smile, "Are you worried about me? Are you jealous?" The next moment, her face flushed crimson. She sneered, "Bruce, don't be so conceited." I knew it. This was the real Alice. She was around me only because she wanted to see how miserable I could get. I said nothing, not wanting to invite more hurtful words from her. I'd been entangled with her for 5 years. Now that I was dying, I just wanted some peace. She still didn't leave. After thinking for a while, I finally came up with a reason. She was probably here to rush me into finalizing the divorce. It made sense. Her relationship with Jimmy couldn't stay hidden forever. Understanding dawned on me. After a long silence, I said to her, "Let's go finalize the divorce tomorrow." Alice looked at me, unconcealed anger in her eyes. I don't know why, but having reached this point, I suddenly spoke my mind. "Anyway, I'm dying soon. I won't keep bothering you." Alice heard me. At first, her face was full of disbelief. Then she looked at me lying in bed, suddenly seemed to realize something, and her eyes filled with sarcasm. "Bruce, have I always been this easy to fool?" As expected, she didn't believe a word I said. Before she left, I heard her muttering curses. Psycho. Cursing himself to die just to divorce me. The next day, I messaged Alice, asking when she was free. She replied she didn't have time. It was like that for the next few days. I felt like she didn't really want to go through with it. But the papers were signed, all those hurtful words had been said, all those things done. Didn't she go to all this trouble just to divorce me and be with her first love? Now I was confused about her again. My wound was healing, but my illness was getting worse. Sometimes, when I went to the bathroom alone, the world would suddenly spin, and I'd collapse. When I woke up, blood and water would be mixed together, pooled on the floor, a horrifying sight. Dr. Stella was worried about me, so she took leave to take care of me, never leaving my side. Sometimes, when my dizziness was severe, I couldn't even clearly see who was in front of me. Less than 2 days later, Alice called, urging me to get the divorce. I guess Jimmy was probably making a fuss, which was why she suddenly had time. I had lost so much weight recently, my cheeks were hollow. I didn't want Alice to see me looking so miserable and pathetic, so I deliberately put on some makeup. Dr. Stella helped me downstairs. From afar, I saw Alice walking towards me, her figure slender, dressed in a neat suit. She was still that cool, elegant, unattainable beauty, like a flower on a high mountain. When she reached me, she looked displeased. "You're bringing her to get a divorce?" I rolled my eyes at her and started walking forward. She followed me, watching my trembling figure, and suddenly said, "Your wound is healed. Why aren't you discharged? Are you planning to live in the hospital to chase someone? My business is none of your concern." Only when I got in the car did I realize Jimmy was also there. He turned around, his face innocent, and said to me, "Bruce, you seem to have lost a lot of weight recently." Hearing this, Alice glanced at me in the mirror. Serves him right. I felt annoyed and didn't want to talk. The car arrived at City Hall. As I got out, another wave of dizziness hit me. Probably my illness acting up again. I saw Jimmy arm in arm with Alice enter the hall. Figures blurred. I couldn't see the path ahead clearly. The next thing I knew, I was being helped out of the restroom, my face pale. I had no strength left today. A few more steps, and I was afraid I'd collapse right there. There was a long line, so I had to text Alice and ask if we could come another day. After a long while, I saw her and Jimmy walking over from the marriage registration area. They were probably thinking of consulting about their marriage right after divorcing me. Alice saw me, pale and slumped in a chair, completely drained of energy. For once, her tone was uncharacteristically gentle. "What's wrong? Not feeling well again?" I shook my head, staring at her, and Jimmy pressed close together. I forced a smile. "I just want to drag out the divorce to deliberately disgust you and Jimmy." Her face instantly turned ugly. She gritted her teeth. "Bruce, are you sick in the head?" Then she stared at me like this for a long time. I probably looked truly awful right then. My vision was already starting to blur. The last time I saw her, she looked pleased, her voice laced with mockery. Bruce, look at you. So pathetic. I really didn't want to collapse so pathetically in front of her and Jimmy. I mustered my last bit of strength and hailed a cab. I opened the car window and looked out. She and Jimmy were still standing in the hall. I watched her back as she walked away, her figure blurring in my vision. By the time I dragged myself to the hospital with my last ounce of strength, the blood was already flowing uncontrollably. Everything went black and I collapsed. Just before losing consciousness, I remembered what she had just said. Bruce, look at you. So pathetic. Pathetic? Not in the next life. Stella worked incredibly hard to bring me back. My body was already at its limit. It must have been difficult for her. Later, she started taking extended leave to care for me. I felt bad troubling her, but she seemed quite at ease, joking, "You saved my life, now I have to save yours." My eyes welled up, and my heart ached. Besides my deceased parents and the Bob from before, it seemed no one had ever been this good to me. Thinking of Bob, I realized he hadn't contacted me in a long time. I knew he was utterly disappointed in me. But when Mom and Dad's case was closed, I still hoped he would be there to see it for himself. His brother, Bruce, had made up for what he owed the family. I hoped he wouldn't keep blaming me. These past few days, my spirits seemed to have improved a bit. Stella started taking me out for walks. The court also called me. The trial was in a few days and I needed to appear. Finally, this good news arrived. I was so happy I wanted to tell Bob immediately. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. It was eerily quiet. I heard a dripping sound from the other end, like something dripping into water. I didn't think much of it and excitedly told Bob the news. But he didn't seem very happy. He just listlessly said, "I know. I suddenly really wanted to see him. I'd been in the hospital all this time and hadn't even called. He'd be mad at me again." Bob sent me an address. Since I was feeling better, I even baked him a small cake, his favorite. Don't mind his cold demeanor now. He used to love snatching my food. Bob used to protect me. Now I should be more considerate. When I arrived with the cake, he had already ordered food and was waiting for me. I glanced at it, all my favorite dishes. I put down the cake and wanted to playfully hug him, but it felt inappropriate. So I just pushed the dishes closer to him. I noticed his left hand was kept down, never brought up. This time Bob was still cold, but thankfully he accepted my cake. Even though he didn't eat it, I knew Bob wasn't blaming me as much anymore. As we were parting, he suddenly looked into my eyes and asked with concern, "Why have you lost so much weight?" My heart leaped into my throat. Even though I was bundled up in a thick coat, scarf, hat, and mask, Bob seemed to have noticed. I guiltily lowered my head, pulling my coat up higher to cover my face as much as possible. "I've been on a diet lately," I lied. Fortunately, he didn't ask any more questions and left with the cake. Watching him leave, I vaguely saw his left hand wrapped in a thick white bandage. I returned to the hospital. Stella was worried I'd been out so long and scolded me sternly. But I was still very happy. The things I was looking forward to were progressing well, one by one. Seeing me like this, Stella couldn't help but feel happy too. After a while, as if remembering something, her expression turned sad again. Lately, my spirits had been getting better and better, but I was still plagued by nightmares at night. As soon as I closed my eyes, I'd see my parents jumping from that high rooftop, despair and helplessness clinging to me. Bob's anger, his coldness, Alice's revenge, and being despised by everyone. Everything from the past flashed by like a slideshow. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat. Opening my eyes, I was back in the hospital room, filled with the smell of disinfectant. I shifted, wanting to get up for a drink of water, only to realize someone was asleep by my bed. I turned on the bedside lamp and rubbed my eyes carefully before I could see it was Bob. Seeing me awake, he got up and slowly tucked me in, murmuring, "Such a grown man, still kicking off the blankets." "Bro," I called out to him. I was afraid I was dreaming. He probably hadn't heard me call him bro in so long. His movements stopped. After a long pause, I heard that familiar voice again. "Your doctor friend said you caught a cold and were sick, so I came to see you." His voice, besides concern, carried a hint of despair I hadn't noticed. I suddenly felt a pang of sadness. We had grown so distant over the years. Since Mom and Dad's accident, we hadn't once sat down and really talked. After a long silence, he tucked my blanket tighter. You had a nightmare, didn't you? Go back to sleep. I'll stay here with you. My eyes welled up. I listened to him and lay back down. Bro. I peeked out and cautiously asked, are you still mad at me? He turned off the light. In the darkness, Bob replied, I'm not mad. It's my fault, bro. I've made you suffer all these years. I pulled the blanket over my head again and cried silently underneath. It felt like all the grievances of these past years vanished in that moment. After a long time, I pulled the blanket down and saw Bob leaning against the bed, quietly watching over me. I remembered the white bandage on his left hand and asked in a hoarse voice, Bro, what happened to your hand? In the moonlight, I saw him quickly lower his hand, saying nothing. He never liked explaining too much, and our relationship had only just started to mend. If I pressed further, he'd get upset again. So I said no more and closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. Bob seemed to sense my cautiousness around him. After a while, he spoke up again. If you have time these next couple of days, let's go visit Mom and Dad. We brothers haven't gone together yet. If we don't go soon, Mom and Dad will blame us. I replied softly, okay. Not long after, he took a bank card out of his pocket and placed it on my nightstand. The money you gave me to pay off debts, there's some left. It's all here. Once Mom and Dad's case is over and we get the compensation, deposit it all into this card. I couldn't see his expression in the dark. I asked, doesn't the company still owe a lot? Then I took the bank card from the table and handed it back to Bob. Pay off all the debts first. It's not too late to give it to me then. Bob clutched the card tightly, his voice choked. The company went bankrupt and was liquidated. I sold the house too. Don't worry, all the debts are cleared. I fought back tears and forced a smile. Yeah. From then on, Bob and I would depend on each other. Wherever Bob went, I would go. Bob got up, his tone light, and gently flicked my forehead, saying with a hint of resignation, okay. When I woke up in the morning, Bob was already gone. Remembering my promise to Bob yesterday to visit Mom and Dad together, I quickly got up and washed. I picked up my phone to call Bob and arrange a time, but Alice's call came in first. I wanted to hang up, but I accidentally answered. She seemed surprised I answered so quickly and was silent for over 10 seconds. I asked her what she wanted. Alice spoke coldly, Bruce, when exactly are you going to get the divorce certificate? I paused, suddenly remembering that Alice and I hadn't finalized our divorce yet. But I was in a hurry to call Bob, so I turned her down. I don't have time today. Maybe in a couple of days. Today I was going to see Mom and Dad with Bob, and tomorrow was the court hearing. I really didn't have time. But to Alice, I was just being difficult on purpose. Bruce, what do you mean by deliberately dragging this out? You're already with another woman. What are you trying to do, still carrying the title of Alice's husband? Alice was furious. I didn't want to explain and plan to reschedule with her. Alice wouldn't let it go. If you don't go today, I'll go find Stella. My voice turned cold. Alice, don't drag other people into our business. She scoffed on the other end of the line. So you don't want me to find her? Then 10 a.m., City Hall. See you there. The call was disconnected, leaving me no room to say another word. I didn't think about anything else and dialed Bob's number. Again and again, the phone seemed to be on silent, unanswered. I had a bad feeling. Just then, Jimmy came to see me. I wanted him to take me to find Bob. My body was so weak now. I was afraid I'd collapse on the road if I rushed. Jimmy helped me get ready. Just as we were about to leave, Bob called back. Bro, where are you? I was worried about him. My voice tinged with an uncontrollable urgency. Bruce, I still have some things to sort out at the company. It'll be a bit later. My anxious heart finally settled. His mood had seemed a bit off lately, and I was afraid something might happen to him. Hearing his words, I breathed a sigh of relief. After a moment's hesitation, I decided I should tell him what had just happened. Bro, Alice wants to finalize the divorce with me today. If you're busy, we can go together tomorrow after Mom and Dad's court hearing. Bob's tone was mild, no objection. Okay. After hanging up, I contacted Alice again and told her I would be there on time. When I arrived, Alice looked at me in my wheelchair with a puzzled expression. Where did you get hurt this time? You're even in a wheelchair. Actually, I didn't want this either. But when I was leaving, I suddenly felt like all my strength had been drained, and I collapsed. It scared Stella badly. She didn't want me to come, but I thought if I didn't, I might not even have a chance to wake up later. The divorce with Alice couldn't be dragged on forever. I ignored Alice and went through the divorce proceedings with her without saying a word. As we were walking out, she suddenly turned around and asked me, "Why have you lost so much weight again recently?" It was the first time she had shown such genuine concern for me. I found it a bit amusing. We were divorced, and only now did she notice I'd lost weight. It seemed I had always managed to hide it well from her. But I was never pretending. I was really dying. Before I could answer, Alice took a call and prepared to leave. I wasn't far from her and heard a gentle male voice on the other end. It was Jimmy. He was asking Alice when she would be back, waiting for her to have dinner together. I shook my head with a bitter smile. Just moments ago, I was actually fantasizing that she genuinely cared about me. I took a taxi back to the hospital and slept soundly. After waking up, I had Stella accompany me to a nearby mall to buy a new outfit. I thought, when I go to see Mom and Dad with Bob tomorrow, I need to look my best. Putting on the new clothes, I looked at my hollow cheeks in the mirror, completely devoid of color. I worried a bit. If Mom and Dad saw me like this, they would be heartbroken, right? Would Bob blame me for not eating properly? So, I forced myself to eat dinner, fighting back nausea, and managed a few bites with some water. I'll go to bed early tonight. When I wake up tomorrow, everything will be better. Stella stayed by my side, never leaving. I told her to go home and rest, but she refused. My sudden collapse today probably terrified her. She had become jumpy about everything. Fortunately, the night passed peacefully. The next day, I woke up feeling exceptionally good. Stella looked at me, her eyes filled with happiness. She supported me very carefully. I pushed her hand away and spun around in front of her. "Look, I'm fine. I feel like my body is getting better and better." She stood in front of me, lost in thought. The next second, I saw her eyes redden again. Stella had specially taken another day off to accompany me today. I felt really bad and tried to give her money, but she wouldn't take it. I wanted to find a tea house near the courthouse so she could spend some of it. But I couldn't find one. So in the end, I had to ask her to wait for me at a small dessert shop. I'd been a lawyer for several years, but this was my first time sitting on the plaintiff's side, watching another lawyer win this case for me. But the hearing had been going on for so long, and Bob still hadn't shown up. I texted him, but he didn't reply. A bad premonition started to grow in my heart. He promised me yesterday that he would definitely be here today. It was such an important day. Bob couldn't have forgotten. When the verdict was finally announced, I couldn't care about anything else and hurried away. Reporters were waiting outside. I gave a few brief answers. My emotions surged, and my head started to spin again. Just as I was about to fall, someone reached out and caught me. Stella's eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Her voice trembling. She said to me, "Bruce, don't worry. Your health is important." I looked up, met her eyes, and suddenly understood something. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I took out my phone and dialed Bob's number. If someone answered, it would disprove my suspicion. But the phone rang again and again, always met with a mechanical voice. "Sorry, the number you dialed is temporarily unavailable." At that moment, I felt like a dead tree in the wind, ready to fall at the slightest breeze. I completely lost consciousness. When I woke up, the police called and asked me to identify Bob's body. The moment I lifted the white sheet, I saw Bob, his face mangled from the fall, just like when my parents jumped from that high rooftop. The horrific sight, I had only seen it in my nightmares. The police said he jumped from the top of his company building. I knelt down, held his hand, and looked at his pale face, knowing he would never smile at me again. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I remembered that night, after I fell asleep, I vaguely heard Bob say, "Bruce, take care of yourself." I thought I was so sick I was hallucinating. I never imagined that Bob was saying goodbye to me then. I went to his company. It was empty. In his desk drawer, there was a hospital diagnosis report. It read, "Severe depression and bipolar disorder." So Bob had been sick all along. All these years, he had been hot and cold with me, and when he saw me, he couldn't control his temper. He was sick and I never even noticed. No wonder. His left hand was wrapped in a thick bandage. That day, he had been planning to slit his wrists. My hand holding the report trembled, and I collapsed to the floor. Stella caught me, her hands shaking as she took out a tissue to wipe my tears. My steps were unsteady as I dazedly walked downstairs. The cold wind blew into me, but I felt no chill. When I came out of the funeral home holding Bob's urn, the sky was overcast, and a light rain was falling. I looked up at the gray sky. Mom and Dad must be blaming me too. Bob and I had agreed to visit Mom and Dad together. I took a taxi to the cemetery, went to Mom and Dad's grave, knelt down, and carefully explained to them, "Mom, Dad, Bob and I are here to see you. I finally found the person who harmed you and cleared up the truth. You can rest easy now. I didn't mean to. I didn't know Bob. In the end, I couldn't finish my sentence. After crying my heart out in front of them, I thought, maybe I should wait until I go down there and apologize to them in person. As I was leaving, I bumped into someone. I looked up. It was Alice. She seemed to be waiting for me here specifically, but we were divorced. I really couldn't think of any reason she would come looking for me, so I walked around her without a second glance. I walked very slowly. She stood there for a moment, probably not expecting me to say nothing to her. So she chased after me, blocking my way, her expression somewhat dazed. "Where are you going?" The tear tracks on my face hadn't dried yet. I glared at her impatiently. "None of your business." Her pupils widened in shock. In all the years we were together, I had probably been too good-tempered and rarely spoke to her in such a tone. She froze for a few seconds, then grabbed my arm, frowning. "Come back with me." I felt like my hallucinations were getting worse lately. It was the first time I heard Alice use the word home with me. I remembered the home she talked about was her parents' house. She once told me it was her and Jimmy's home. So, she and I never really had a home together. I didn't know what was wrong with her today. When I didn't move, she kept holding my arm. I reminded her, "Alice, you forgot. We're already divorced." Instantly, her face turned so ugly. Finally, at a stalemate, she reluctantly found an excuse. "Mom and Dad asked me to bring you back. There's a family gathering." It was truly ridiculous. They, who had always looked down on me, were now actively inviting me back to their home. But I didn't have a home anymore. Since 5 years ago, I haven't had a home. I shook off her hand and hailed a cab by the roadside. She chased after me relentlessly, her emotions high. "Bruce, Mom and Dad aren't well. Can't you be a little more considerate?" I thought about all those years, the days I tried my best to be a good son-in-law. I had been very considerate. Now, I didn't want to step through that door even in death, so I deliberately said to Alice, "I'm afraid I'll die in your house, and you'll find me unlucky then." I saw Alice's expression contort, her face a mask of disbelief, like her emotions were being torn apart. "Bruce, what did you say?" I knew she would react like this. She never believed a single word I said. I waved my hand. "Nothing." I got in the car and left. My vision quickly blurred. Probably, I would never see her again. I got out of the car and went to Stella's place. She had helped me so much. I'd always wanted to treat her to a meal to thank her, but I couldn't pick a good place. So she just invited me to her place for hot pot. After all that talk, she was the one doing all the work again. I was becoming a professional freeloader. The hot pot bubbled, steam rising and obscuring Stella's face a bit. That was fine. This way she couldn't see my face clearly either. Maybe I wouldn't look so ugly in her eyes. The hot pot was really hot. I just dipped into the chili oil a few times to taste it. Halfway through the meal, I saw Stella sweating profusely and asked her to get some water from the kitchen. The moment she left, my chopsticks fell to the floor. As I bent down to pick them up, a gush of blood poured from my nose again. I quickly covered it with my sleeve. I still forced myself to get up and place the bank card and note I had prepared earlier on the dining table. "Stella, thank you for taking care of me. If possible, could I ask you to scatter my ashes in the mountain forest? Please accept the bank card. I know it's a bit morbid, but considering our decent relationship, please don't mind." I thought about it for a long time and decided not to be buried with my parents and brother. I really couldn't face them. I also don't like the cold, damp underground. I prefer the warm, lush mountain forests. Before leaving, I looked at Stella's back in the kitchen, hunched over and trembling slightly. Why did she still cry so easily? I walked out of the complex and onto the bustling street. It felt like the bone-chilling, gloomy days were over. Warm sunlight on me, feeling toasty. I collapsed by a flower bed on the roadside. A large amount of blood gushed out. Watching the crowd gradually gather, my consciousness seemed to be fading. Alice's epilogue. I heard from a friend that Bruce's parents' case was reopened, and he won the lawsuit. I thought, after all these years, he finally accomplished what he wanted to do. If I humbled myself and went to him, our relationship wouldn't be so tense, right? Actually, when we divorced, things did get a bit ugly. I didn't intentionally make things difficult for him. It was just seeing him like that, his indifferent attitude towards me, that made me furious. The day we signed the divorce papers, seeing Bruce so close to that Stella person at the hospital, I couldn't control my emotions. We weren't even fully divorced yet. How dare he find someone new so quickly? So I always looked for opportunities to make things hard for him. That day outside the cemetery, I had clearly gone there specifically to find him. But the words of reconciliation on my lips somehow, damn it, changed. I clearly wanted him to come home. I wanted to talk to him properly. I even wanted to remarry him. But he looked like he had completely given up on me. That sentence he said just before getting into the car, that he was dying soon, I just took it as an excuse to get rid of me. But watching him get further and further away from me, I started to panic a little. I clearly could have spoken to him nicely. We clearly could have sat down and talked calmly. When I left home today, I was still thinking I absolutely had to coax him back. So I drove and followed him. When I reached the destination, I saw Stella come downstairs to meet him. Suddenly, I felt like I was being played by this man again. I wasn't resigned. I waited downstairs for a long time, but he didn't come out. Just when I was freezing and about to leave, I finally saw him slowly walk out of the complex. I thought no matter what, I had to talk to him today. Seeing how slowly he was walking, I went to a nearby boba shop and bought a hot drink. But when I came out with the drink, Bruce was gone in a flash. I searched all around but couldn't find him, until I saw a crowd gathered around the flower bed in the park next door. Through a gap in the crowd, I thought I saw a familiar figure. That person looked like Bruce. I stumbled towards them, half of the hot drink spilling from my hand, scalding a large red mark on my skin. His face was deathly pale. He was lying on the ground, seemingly breathless. I didn't care about anything else. I rushed to the front and hugged him. Only then did I realize his clothes were soaked in blood. How could this be? How could this happen? A thought suddenly struck me. The day we divorced, after he left, my office trash can was suddenly half full of tissues. The cleaning lady asked me if someone had been injured. At that time, I was so focused on how to get revenge on Bruce that I didn't hear her clearly, just told her to dispose of the trash quickly. Maybe back then Bruce was already impossible. I forced myself not to think too much. He might have just fainted temporarily. I called an ambulance and sent him to the hospital. But the doctors hadn't even started emergency treatment when they said he was already dead. The sudden shock was too much for me to bear, and I collapsed in the hospital. Actually, after all these years, I stopped hating him long ago. Perhaps I had fallen in love with him long ago. All these years, even if I were a stone, my heart had been warmed by him. That dinner party I had initially declined. But his Bob told me Bruce was also going, and somehow I ended up arriving early. I deliberately ignored them, waiting for him to come and beg me. But he was too stubborn. He would rather draw a clear line with me than ask me for anything. That time I was furious and completely stopped our collaboration. He left me. They couldn't survive. They should have come to beg me by now, right? But he seemed to be doing even better. I don't know why. I clearly wanted to talk to him. I clearly could have been nicer. But when I saw him and Stella together as a couple, I couldn't stop myself from wanting to make things difficult for him. I deliberately made him drink a lot at the dinner table. He had schemed against me like that back then. I just didn't know he would vomit blood. I was terrified. I rushed into the hospital like a madwoman. I didn't want anything to happen to him. I even knelt on the ground and begged the doctors to save him. Many people took pictures. When Bruce woke up, I suddenly felt I was being overly dramatic. If he saw those photos, he would laugh at me for the rest of my life. I had someone delete all the photos that were posted. Luckily, he didn't see them. But Bruce's Bob saw them and came to my door, causing a huge ruckus. So I temporarily had him detained for a few days. Because of this incident, everything from before was dug up. Bruce wanted to finalize the divorce with me. He completely hated me, so I thought, I'll help him investigate what happened back then as my apology. I thought since he took the documents, he had accepted it. But when I followed him to the hospital, he went to find Stella again and even risked his life to take a knife for her. He went to such lengths for another woman. I finally saw clearly. He never had any feelings for me after all. Later, I saw him smile at Stella and care for her many times. I finally felt that maybe I was wrong. I never knew how to love someone. In the years Bruce was married to me, he cared for me meticulously. At home, he always worked hard without complaint. But I, because of that mistake 5 years ago, had always been cold and harsh to him. I even urged him to divorce me repeatedly, had Jimmy deliberately act with me, hurting him again and again. Even in our last meeting, I still, for the sake of my ridiculous pride, didn't say a kind word to him. This time, I lost him forever. When I woke up, it was 3 days later. I found out that Bruce's body had already been sent for cremation by Stella. I found her furious and demanded to know why. Why won't you even give me my husband's ashes? Stella grabbed my collar fiercely and actually started hitting me in the hospital. How much must she have liked Bruce to risk being fired just to vent this anger for him? Like, Stella gritted her teeth, her fists raining down. Alice, ask yourself, after all these years, have you done right by Bruce? Where were you when he was bankrupt? What were you doing when Bruce had nowhere to turn? When he had a terminal illness and was carrying it all alone? What did you do? I remembered again how Bruce had suddenly fainted in front of me, suddenly bled, suddenly said he felt like he was dying. I shook my head, trying to hide my panic. Alice, you've always been high and mighty. Everyone has to cater to you. But what did Bruce do wrong? What on earth did he do wrong? Stella's punches landed on my face one after another, completely crushing the little bit of pitiful pride I had left. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and shakily got up from the floor. It was always me who was wrong. I was wrong. Bruce, he shouldn't have had to endure all this. I walked out of the hospital, went to the top floor of my company, and stood at the highest point. I saw Bruce standing downstairs. In a daze, I was transported back to that drunken night 5 years ago when he secretly whispered in my ear, "Actually, I kind of like you. Actually, my Bruce, I love you." The wind howled in my ears. I'm gonna find my Bruce.